Hey everyone, it's Mojaxx back in the DJcity UK lab, and today I'm reviewing the Numark NVII, the sequel to the original NV. Now that came out around about the end of 2014, so it's been about 2 years between the two versions, and I think that's a pretty reasonable amount of time to leave between them. And clearly the original NV must have been a massively popular controller for Numark. And I haven't asked them that, but I can tell, because here we are 2 years later, we have the NV2, and it's largely the same controller. The layout, the design, pretty much the same. They've made a few tweaks here and there, which of course I will talk about, but fundamentally it's the same beast. And that says a lot with a company like Numark. You know, if something doesn't do well in the market for Numark, if it's not getting good user feedback, they will drop it. They will design something new. You know, they will always have a mid-range controller. This is street price around about $700. They will always have a controller around that kind of price. But it doesn't have to be the NV. They could have moved on to something entirely new, and they haven't. They've stuck to this original NV design. And so that should say a lot. Now, I reviewed the original NV when it first dropped before I worked for DJcity, and I liked it a lot. It was very genuinely, truly groundbreaking at the time. It was the first controller we'd ever seen with screens built in. It came before the Control S8 from Native Instruments. This was the first one to hit the market with these kind of displays. And I really value displays like that, so for me that was great. And yeah, overall as a product I'm kind of predisposed to like this, but it is a sequel and sequels can be hard. So the question is this a Dark Knight or is it a Matrix Reloaded? Let's find out. So yes, in terms of the physical hardware, the NV2 stays very close to the blueprint of the original, with the main noticeable difference being a tweaked paint job. If you aren't familiar with the first iteration, I'll run through it quickly. It's a 4-deck Serato controller, which unlocks the full Serato DJ. The construction is mostly plastic, but feels solid enough, and that does mean the unit remains impressively lightweight, despite not being so compact as to feel cramped. The master output is on balanced XLRs and unbalanced RCAs, and it has a separate booth output, also on RCAs. There is only one external input, which is switchable between mic with a tone control and a line level aux input. This is strictly a controller, it's not a standalone mixer. It's worth noting that this is also not a bus powered device. You will need the mains adapter, but that is to be expected with the 2 screens on board. The pad section is fully comprehensive, with 8 velocity sensitive pads on each side and a ton of different modes for them. Q loops, auto loops, loop rolls, manual looping, flip, sampler and velocity sampler, and both varieties of slicer. These now traditional Numark/Akai style pads feel very familiar, and although they're on the smaller side, they feel great. You've got long, accurate pitch sliders and lots of space to work with around the EQs and faders. The fader section itself is clean and comfortable, and the crossfader has a smooth feel and a short, sharp cut-in for scratching. Which brings us to the jog wheels. They're a capacitive touch design and are very responsive indeed. I'm not hugely enamoured by the very low resistance of the platters on here. I prefer a little more tension personally, but I noticed DJ Flipside from the Jump Smokers is a big user of the NV2, and I've always been a big fan of his cutting style, so if he's happy on these jogs, that's good enough for me. One cool feature of the NV that's carried over to the NV2 is the touch sensitive knobs found all over the controller. You can use them to activate effects or as kill switches on the EQs, for example, and they add an extra dimension to the way that you interact with the features on here. I also dig the filter loop and filter FX modes, which turn the regular high-low combo filters into something far more interesting. Queuing is fully covered with both socket sizes, Q master blend and split Q, and there's plenty of output level to be had. I've long admired the main innovation on the first NV, the screens, and they remain a real highlight on the NV2. They're bright, clear and high resolution with wide viewing angles and different views to choose from, which offer loads of useful information. And it's on and around the screens where the main upgrades on the new version are found. On the original NV, I found it a bit weird that the scroll knobs didn't load tracks when pushed in. You had to scroll to the track you wanted, then press another button to load it. Now it's all in one motion, which I massively prefer. You've got more options for sorting now as well on the screens, and they are real options. Unlike on the Numark dashboard accessory, these controls actually change the sorting layout in Serato DJ itself, and you can sort by artist, title, album, BPM and key. I could always handle even more options there. Sometimes I like to sort by genre, for example, but the choices here should be plenty for most situations. One other thing that I complained about with the original NV was the lack of a beat grid display on the screens, which is now present and correct on the NV2. Even if you don't use sync, that beat grid info is really useful when mixing, and it's important to tweak those for rhythm-based effects and so on, and so I'm glad to see it on the new version. Overall, the changes on the NV2 are pretty small, but I like all of them. I doubt there's anything like enough to encourage an existing NV user to replace their original, but for new buyers, the upgrades are all nice touches. So there you go, my take on the Numark NV2. You know, this $600 to $800 price point, which the NV2 is right in the middle of, is a very important one for a lot of DJs. Much below that, you are talking about beginner basic equipment. Much above that, you know, above that $1,000 kind of threshold, you start to get into compromises between practicality and performance. It's all well and good having this incredible high performance bit of kit, but no use if you can't take it out of the house to your gigs. So yeah, this mid-range level is really important to those guys and girls who are out there working DJs who need reliable, high performance kits, but can still be taken around between different venues on the same night or on different nights or whatever. It's got to be practical, and the NV2 kind of sums up that mid-range very nicely. We have got the right kind of performance there. We've got the full Serato DJ it unlocks. You've got those screens, which I love. You have lots of space to work with. You know, the controls are all nicely spaced out. You're not going to feel cramped on there. Yeah, the jog wheels are pretty small, but they still perform very nicely. They're very accurate. And likewise, the pads are kind of half the normal size that you'd find, but also still very practical to use and very nice feel to them. You know, this feels very comfortable. That's my overwhelming experience of using the NV2. It just feels comfortable. And yeah, that might be because I used the NV, the original one, quite a lot, and then I've moved on to this. But actually, no, it is just a nice, familiar, comfortable layout. And I think a lot of DJs will find that. So in terms of performance, it's there. In terms of value, I think it's very, very good. And in terms of practicality, yeah, it is lightweight and it's not massive. You can carry it around in a bag quite comfortably. So yeah, it might not seem like the most exciting controller in the world because we kind of saw it 2 years ago. With the original version, we kind of saw the exciting innovation that came already with the screens. So there's not a lot new here, but I don't think that's a bad thing. This is now a tried and true design, and it's one that I'm happy to recommend. Thank you for watching today. Make sure you subscribe for all our future tips, tricks, and product reviews. I'll see you soon.